Hello everyone! My name is Ian, the part-time Dungeon Master, and welcome back to D20 Sundays. This one's on Fudging Rolls. I did a Twitter post about it, kind of as a joke, and a little bit of discussion was had, as well as I did a Reddit post about it, where a little bit more discussion was also had there. Now, before we go into the full discussion of Fudging Rolls and why Dungeon Masters do it, I would like to preface it with this. When it comes to Dungeons & Dragons, there must be trust between the Dungeon Master and his players. And it goes both ways. The players have to trust the Dungeon Master just as the Dungeon Master has to trust the players, on various reasons and various things. The whole game does not work if there is no trust between those two sides. The reason being, well, then you're going to become a little bit cynical and kind of spiteful towards each other and not fully believe in the best of each other. And it kind of shows. So, I'm going to start this off with a story. This story is true. This deals with Steve. If you don't remember who Steve is, go watch some of my earlier videos about Don't Be That Guy. So, Steve was one of my friends in this Pathfinder campaign. I want to say this was actually in the first campaign. The players had just gotten done with essentially a small dungeon crawl where they dealt with a large number of monsters and having to fight their way through this dungeon in order to obtain a special MacGuffin. I can't remember what it is. It's been so long. But the players successfully got through it. It was a hard march through that dungeon, but they did it. And, Steve was playing a rather tanky character. He had an 18 AC, I want to say. So, for the most part, Steve took most of the lumps because that's what his essentially designed role was in the whole group, was that he was going to be up front making the most noise as possible, and everyone's going to target him. Well, there comes a small problem. Steve was always getting hit. And at that time, I had a DM screen. This is my screen. You cannot see behind my screen. I roll behind my screen. And you just have to simply accept that. And it came probably about, I probably have to say the 5th combat through the dungeon, that, Steve, started visibly getting upset about the fact that he was getting hit so much. And it was like, oh, Steve, this warg has taken a bite attack at you, and I roll the die. It's like, 19 to your AC, that's going to hit. And he's like, of course it hits. Everything hits me. I was like, okay, it's getting a little upset. And, I roll again for the next round, he gets hit again, and then, some interesting words were had as he accepted the fact that he got hit. And I was like, okay, obviously Steve's getting either frustrated and he's starting to not believe that I'm rolling what I'm rolling. Because he couldn't believe that I was constantly rolling high enough to hit his AC. So I removed my DM screen. I folded it up, set it in my backpack, and let them see my dice as I rolled them. And I rolled, and it's like, they have a +6 to hit, you have an AC of 18. They have to roll at least a 12 on this die in order to hit you. And I rolled 13. The next time I rolled 15. Next time rolled 17. Next time rolled 12. I rolled every time versus Steve, and I hit every time. And Steve could see that I was rolling these dice. And I even put the stat block for the creatures out for them to see at this point, so that way they know what they're going against. And they can see I was not fudging anything. The dice simply fell as the dice fell. And that won a bit of trust back from Steve at that point in time. Never mind, things would later on, you know what, forget that. But, when it comes down to it, by doing that, I renewed the trust that the players had in me, as well as, Steve had in me, in the sense that he understood the dice fall as the dice fall. I do not control what it lands on. I just simply roll it. And from that moment on, and actually from, my very beginnings of dungeon mastering, I don't fudge rolls very often. Most of the time, the dice fall as the dice fall. Now, I'm onto the, while we're onto this, I made a Twitter post about, it's like, a joke. It's like, oh, I roll a crit against a player. Oh, ho, yeah. Roll again, it's another crit. Oh, okay, yeah. Roll a third crit. Oh, So yeah, it misses, and it's fudging the rolls. We Dungeon Masters at times will fudge rolls. Normally for the benefit of the story and for the benefit of the party. Now, the reasons as to why we do it. There are different moments, and each moment requires their own justification as to whether we do or do not. A lot of people call it plot armor, and I can honestly agree that it's kind of plot armor, but at the same time, I don't think that a player character should die to just some random creature in a random fight that has no major bearing upon the plot. Now, against a villain of the plot, like a main villain, or the big bad evil villain himself, definitely. Players should die or have the possibility of dying or coming close to dying fighting those people. Because they're the villains. Having very important plot-centric fights that almost kill players, I think, is a standard in Dungeons & Dragons. If a player dies in one of those fights, then they died at a moment that was most impactful to the campaign. But having them die because, a kobold got lucky and, took out your 10th level fighter in the third round because he rolled 3 nat 20s in a row. Sucks to be you. And I agree, sucks to be you. That's how Dungeons & Dragons is played. I understand the fact that, it is, at times, people want to play that very reality kind of real gritty thing where people die for random reasons and at random times because shit happens. But at the same time, I don't think that should happen all the time. It really based on the storyline you're playing. If you're playing a realistic, gritty kind of game like that where people die at random times due to random reasons, then yes, the dice fall as the dice fall. I'm not one to shy away from, killing off a player character. I've killed a number. But at the same time, I feel like it does the character the best service, and it's kind of a respect to the character and respect to the player, if that character dies when it is at the most crucial point, or at a crucial point of the plot or the storyline. So up until then, like if they're not facing against a big bad evil guy, if they're not facing against a villain or a plot-centric fight, or maybe even a puzzle where it's like, if you don't solve it, you die, then it's going to be like, I might fudge 1 or 2 rolls. If it's against any of those, the dice fall as the dice fall. But if against, say, a random encounter that you run into on your way of traveling, I'm not going to have the party wiped out by, some fucking, kobolds or goblins that are just rolling fire for some ungodly reason. To where I'm just rolling and it's like, nat 20, nat 20, nat 20. I'm not going to do that. Because, one, that's like kind of a letdown that the whole party was wiped out by just a random encounter. And, what's next? The heroes of the land who now have names, like, the people around the land know or heard of them, and have wiped out by just a random band of orcs or something. And, these guys were supposed to be the chosen ones, but, they got their asses handed to them by, a few guys that got some lucky strikes in. And why that could be, like, its interesting own, like, turn point of the campaign itself, again, I feel like it's a disservice and not using that character's death to its fullest to just have it at a random moment. Having it at a crucial moment, I feel like, does it much better. And I know some of you are going to disagree with me on that. It's fine. Everyone has their own different dungeon mastering styles. They have their own different play styles and so on. But it was that discussion about that I had on Twitter and on Reddit about, fudging rolls so that way I don't accidentally TPK a party at some point because the party can't roll very well for some ungodly reason, and I'm rolling complete fire the whole time. It's, there has to be moments where you fudge your rolls in order to give the players a better fighting chance, or a chance to essentially turn the tides and overcome this hard fight. I'm not saying make the fight easy by fudging the rolls. Definitely make the fight challenging. But at the same time, don't flat out murder them just because, you're rolling, fire and the players aren't. Just having them wiped out by some bunch of nameless nobodies is kind of insulting, and it's a bummer. I'll tell you that much. Having the characters die in like a much more meaningful way, I feel like helps inspire the stories of Dungeons and Dragons, and help inspires the players to make a new character. And it's like, oh well, yeah, my guy died, but he died by shoving the others out of the the collapsing portal, so that way only he would be trapped in the realm in between realms, and the rest of the party was able to survive and go on to complete the campaign and fight the evil guy. Yes, my character's gone, but he sacrificed himself. It's things like that, those kind of heroic moments that I feel like those would be moments I would not fudge the rules or fudge my rolls. I don't know. But yeah, so that's kind of like what today's discussion is on, like, fudging rolls and why do we do it as a dungeon master. We do it because, well, for the most part, we don't want to kill the party off just yet. Or because we were like, oh shit, we miscalculated. Which, it's happened. I've done it myself. There have been moments where it's like, I think at this level they should be able to take this hill giant. And all of a sudden it's like, no, they cannot take this hill giant. They are not properly, organized, and they are not properly powerful enough to take on this hill giant. They are stupid. So they need to learn combat tactics before taking on a single hill giant. Gotcha. And other times it's like, I made a homebrew creature and I put the party against it, and I almost one-shot the barbarian while he was raging. Yeah, I've made that mistake. It's like, oh boy, hits like a fucking freight train, so I'm just going to modify that a little bit to where he doesn't hit very often because he has a very low chance to hit. But when he hits, yeah. So, fudging things is essentially a necessity at times. But really, like I said, the moment is essentially whether it's justified or not. If the moment where it's like, oh hey, this is a very critical moment in the campaign, and if the players die here, then the campaign's over. Well, you can make that call then. Do you want to fudge the rolls and, defeat the players? Or, yeah, pretty much defeat the players. Or do you want to fudge it in their favor to where they have a chance of, like, turning the tides back into their favor? You decide as the dungeon master, and you have to make those decisions quickly and often at the table themselves while the dice are falling. So, I wish you luck. Anyways, I gotta go. Catch you guys in the next D20 Sundays.